Under the Radar, bringing movies and people together, one frame at a time. Hey guys, I'm Rand Younger, and this is another episode of Under the Radar, bringing movies and people together, one frame at a time. And with me tonight, I have a very special guest. It's been a while for Mr. Tyler Michael. Tyler, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you, Randy. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, was the last time the John Landis retrospective?
Yes, it was, and it was a fantastic conversation, if I may add.
One of my favorite shows ever, I might add. You and Ivy absolutely killed it. You were fantastic, and we had to split that episode in half. So it was basically two episodes in one, and we could still be talking at this point. We I had a great time, and I'm assuming you and Ivy did as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was fun. And we're going to have a lot of fun tonight as well. Tonight, we're going to be discussing sort of a cult film from 1989. It's called Black Rain, and it is now celebrating its 35th anniversary. Now, this is a gritty action thriller starring Michael Douglas, directed by Ridley Scott. You've got two amazing talents right there. It's just a fun movie. It's not exactly an intelligent movie, but it is very entertaining. It's action packed. You've got Andy Garcia in a supporting role. You've got a great Japanese supporting cast. They filmed on location in Japan, and the score is by Hans Zimmer, who I absolutely love. I've mentioned him on the show many times. But Tyler, I believe this was your first viewing of Black Rain. What were your initial thoughts?
Well, when I heard about the film, I looked into it and I heard it got a mixed reception, but I'm the kind of person who's very optimistic when going into a film,
Hmm.
you know. But as a person who's not like really big with action movies, I wanted to view it at least for what it is, not what I want it to be.
Hmm.
And for fans, I think they'll enjoy it fine.
Yeah,
But for me, it just feels very standard and by the numbers,
right.
which I hate to be part of that crowd. But
No,
I'm not saying it's a bad film either. I'm not saying it's
no.
unwatchable. It pleases the audience it's meant for. I just didn't gain a lot out of the film as I'd hope.
Yeah, it's a very standard by the numbers action movie, but it achieves its purpose,
Yes.
which, like I said, to entertain. I'm a humongous Michael Douglas fan. He's one of my absolute favorite directors. So is his father, Kirk Douglas, an amazing talent there, and basically handed the baton over to his son here. Um, and this is actually the first movie Michael Douglas did in 2 years following his Oscar win for Wall Street. So there was a lot riding on this movie. Unfortunately, it wasn't as obviously good as Wall Street, but it's a relatively decent follow-up, I'd say. And again, just a fun movie. I think Andy Garcia is great too. He plays kind of like this young hotshot detective to Michael Douglas's Nick Conklin. And like I said, you've got a great supporting cast, mostly Japanese actors, and you have a very random love interest in Kate Capshaw, who audiences might know her best from Temple of Doom, and the real life wife of Steven Spielberg. I had to mention Spielberg at least once in the episode because I am a
Of course.
Spiel nerd. But yeah, it has a lot of great elements. Like, I mean, the
Mhm.
production design alone, like
Yes.
this movie looks beautiful. It definitely took me back to one of Ridley Scott's previous films, Blade Runner. Obviously,
Yes.
has a
I
very yeah, sorry, but a great look, Tyler.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of Blade Runner as well when I was watching the film, and I knew it was directed by him. And while it's a great film that captures, like, I overall love the Japanese aesthetic of the film. I will say that.
Yeah,
Do I think it's as iconic or as interesting as Blade Runner?
mm,
No, but is it pleasing to the eye while I was watching it? Yes, it did fine.
yeah, for sure. Again,
And he also uses some of those shadows, those the
yeah.
lighting, seeping through the windows.
And I also want to mention that the cinematographer is Jean de Bont, who directed Speed and Twister. So
Mm.
it's definitely a really unique and special look to Black Rain, having his talent there, coupled with Ridley Scott's beautiful direction. And yeah, it's I remember seeing the VHS of this back in the 90s, like in video stores. I was a little young to like, I mean, the poster looks cool, but am I really interested in seeing this at 10? No. I think I saw it for the first time when I was in my 20s, and I'm glad I did because it's just a fun one. Um,
Yeah, it was definitely entertaining for what it is, and I will give
right.
a few credits that I want to point out with the film. For all
Okay.
my criticisms about how standard generic is in terms of the characters, in terms of the action, which I didn't think was all that exciting, but had some moments.
Mhm.
Um, there were a few things that did stand out to me. One was Kate Capshaw, who could have easily been written out of the film. I mean, at least the romantic element. She does stuff, but she just kind of feels shoehorned in.
Mhm.
But she gives definitely a better performance than in Temple of Doom. This is her utilized at her best, just needs better writing.
Yeah.
Michael Douglas, here's another thing. This is Michael Douglas being a full-blown action hero when you
Yeah.
get to it. Like this is him kind of being a Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and even a bit of Clint Eastwood, which
Yeah.
I will commend the film for. I think they would have a better balance of how to utilize him as a kind of an action hero in, or should I say, anti-hero
Mhm.
in Falling Down.
Yeah.
But this was definitely an interesting, change of character for him.
Yeah.
And on top of it, I forgot the actor's name, but the Japanese policeman that was assisting them. What I
Yeah.
found out is he did not know how to speak English, and he gave a really emotional performance. In fact,
Yeah.
out of all the characters in the film, I think he was the most fascinating. Not the most engaging in terms of writing, but in terms of performance, I felt the most connected with.
I absolutely, his name actually is Ken Takakura. He passed away, but
Mhm.
I thought he was a brilliant, he had great chemistry with Douglas, and the scenes with him and Garcia in the nightclub singing the karaoke scene. I thought that was so funny and so, cute. It was fun.
It was
Um,
actually a genuine moment that I did smile when
yeah.
watching.
Yeah, so the cast is fantastic. Kate Capshaw, yeah, like you said, she kind of basically phoned it in. This could have been any like popular actress in 1989 that could have had this role, unfortunately. But it was
Mhm.
cool to see her because I think she was like just slightly more fleshed out than Temple of Doom. I
Oh,
wanted
definitely.
I would have loved to have seen more of her and Douglas on screen, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they needed more screen time to make her interesting. That's where it fails in the writing department.
Yeah.
And I will say, in terms of phoning in performances, she was the least phoned in my opinion.
Hmm.
The one who I thought was really phoning it in, and I really do respect him as an actor, I thought it was Andy Garcia who's really phoning things in as the comic relief. And no, there are some genuine moments that I legitimately like where he becomes likable and charming. But for the most part, I just see the typical comic relief that I think he
Hmm.
doesn't really pull off too well, at
Okay.
least in this film.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not a huge admirer of Garcia. This is one of the handful of films that I actually really respected his performance. I thought he was decent, I thought he was funny and very charismatic, which, is apparent in most of his other performances, especially after this in the 90s. But I also wanted to mention real quick, there's a very small role by Luis Guzman in the beginning, which is a lot of fun. There are actually two other roles in this movie that is worth mentioning because I'm a huge fan of the movie Office Space, which is also celebrating an anniversary this year.
Love
Uh,
that movie.
yeah, me too. One of my absolute favorite comedies. It turns 25 this year, and I wanted to mention two of the other roles in Black Rain. You've got Stephen Root and Richard Reel, who I interviewed actually a couple of years ago. They play the internal affairs agents at the beginning of the movie that are like interrogating Michael Douglas. They're in the scene together, so I don't know if this was like destiny for them to work again together 10 years later in Office Space, but it is kind of like a nice stroke of fate, as it were.
Oh,
But
absolutely. I didn't even recognize them.
yeah, I know. It's like a 5 minute scene, and they're kind of just there. I don't even think Stephen Root has any lines. If he does, he has like maybe one or two. And they're basically the whole subplot is Nick Conklin is basically sort of a criminal. He's taken money in the past. So he's got a very shady history, and these internal affairs agents are trying to get to the bottom of it. On top of that, he is a divorced dad, and he owes money to his wife. He gambles and does illegal motorcycle racing. So this is a character. He's not your typical action hero. He's got some flaws about him. He's got a dark past and kind of a dark present too. But I think in the end, things look more in his favor. So I think Douglas was a great choice.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, he was definitely an unconventional choice, but he proved that he can do action decently.
Yeah, I think prior to this, he did so it was Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile, which were kind of like an Indiana Jones knockoff. And
Right.
in those films, I didn't see them, but I believe he plays like an adventurer slash, action hero,
Hmm.
basically. So I guess that was kind of like a preamble to Black Rain in a weird way.
Like,
He's
yeah, I'm sure they didn't just like pick him out of a hat and say like,
no,
let's just cast Michael Douglas because he won an Oscar. Let's see how he does in action. You
no.
are right in *Romancing the Stone*, which I haven't seen either. I can't pretend I have,
Mm.
but given how the film looks, it looks like it's also a satire on adventures as well. Like it has like that kind of a balance to it, probably similar to *The Princess Bride*, how that was kind of tongue in cheek, but also something you can, get invested in emotionally.
Yeah.
I think that's what *Romancing the Stone* was. Keyword.
Very, yeah, very tongue in cheek. Black Rain, though, it's more of a straightforward thriller, action thriller. And
Exactly.
there's humor in it. I mean, the script is decent, and there's some really genuine moments, again, between Douglas and Garcia and the Japanese detective who joins them. And it's like the humor is balanced pretty well with the violence, which is there's some really gory scenes. There's a murder in like one of the first scenes in this restaurant in New York. Uh,
Hmm.
and that the action really starts like 10 minutes in, you know, and yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, and I want to mention the lighting, uh, and John DeBont, cinematographer. It just kind of felt like an extension of Blade Runner in a way.
It
Um,
did.
that urban futuristic Tokyo type, landscape. I love that stuff. And in a weird way, this can be considered maybe even a successful a spiritual sequel, or at least a nice little follow-up in Ridley Scott's career. And
Mhm.
of course, Scott has done some great films since. We most recently reviewed Napoleon, which was kind of lackluster in my opinion. I think I prefer Black Rain to that. This is a more fun film. But real quick, Tyler, are you a Ridley Scott fan? Have you been following this great director?
Unfortunately, I've actually just saw Blade Runner for the first time late last year, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
And I have seen some of his works, like Alien, for example, but I can't say that I'm fully familiar with his best works. I haven't really been following on his filmography, but he does make very entertaining films, and I feel like, at least in theory, that his films always look like a spectacle to look at, even if they're not good.
Yeah, it's
So
a
he definitely has directing talents that definitely shows. So
sadly, it's basically a lot of his films are more style rather than the substance. Uh,
right, and I felt that was this film's.
yeah, agreed. So that's kind of the trend. Sometimes he comes up with a good one, like of course Gladiator that had some strong performances.
I forgot he
Uh,
directed that.
yeah, and of course Alien. That might be one of his best films. Not might, definitely is one of his best films.
It
Uh,
is.
and he's done some great stuff in the 90s too. When we did Napoleon, we did 1492 Conquest of Paradise.
Oh my God, I remember the trailer for that on my Wayne's World VHS growing up. I've
Yes,
been
me
curious
too.
to see that ever since I was a kid.
I think the trailer is better than the movie itself, actually.
Oh no.
Yeah. Plus, it has a fantastic score by Vangelis or Vangelis. I can never get that right. But he did Chariots of Fire, and 1492 has a very, very strong score. So that was Ridley Scott back in 1992, celebrating the anniversary of 1492. And it's a disappointing one. But again, style over substance seems to be the recurring trend in Scott's career, sadly. Um,
Which is
and
probably why I'm not too interested in seeing his films, because a lot of his films to me seem like, okay, they look great, but Something inside me is telling me I'm not going to love it.
Yeah. Uh, Similar can be said about his late brother, Tony Scott, who directed a ton of really good action movies throughout the 90s. He did, like Crimson Tide, he did True Romance. Uh,
Oh, True Romance is really good.
Such a great movie. And yeah, sadly, he passed a couple years back, but he's left, and he's done a lot of, he did a lot of great work with Denzel Washington, one of my other all-time favorite actors. Would love to see Denzel and Michael Douglas in a movie. I'm not sure if they did anything together off the top of my head, but basically all the movies I just mentioned have a very similar common thread in them, and that is the composer Hans Zimmer, who I am a huge aficionado of his work and respect him greatly. He's one of my absolute favorite composers. In Black Rain, he gives us, this is actually early on in his career. He actually, one of his first big scores was actually the year prior, 1988, for Rain Man, which
Mhm.
is just a gorgeous, gorgeous score. It's got some great electronics in there, a strong theme. It's kind of like a weird, like dreamlike type score. Uh, and then he comes to Japan now with Black Rain, which has some really interesting instrumentation, which is found in common Japanese music. You've got some really strong themes, especially that there's a chase theme that I just absolutely love. And yeah, they actually use some of this trailer music in the Speed trailer, which was directed by Jean de Bont, the cinematographer here. But enough about me. Tyler, what is your association with Zimmer? Are you an aficionado yourself?
I can't say that I've listened to a lot of. Okay, I take that back. I have listened to a lot of Zimmer scores, but usually it's when I don't even realize I'm listening to his music. Like
Okay.
for example, I just recently found out that he did the music for, of all films, Madagascar, which I
Yes.
love, but I just never would associate the film with Hans Zimmer.
Yes.
However, though, I was also surprised, but however, I was also surprised to find out that he did the music for Prince of Egypt, which is a really underrated animated film, and it's like one of his epic pieces, along with The Lion King, in terms of kids' entertainment.
Yeah.
In fact, what even fascinates me more about Zimmer is he did the music not only for Pirates of the Caribbean, which was a childhood favorite of mine, but also another childhood favorite where it started to make sense when I listened to the music again, Muppet Treasure Island.
That's a great score, by the way. I
Yeah, like what I love about him as a composer is, in general, even in his works like say The Dark Knight, Interstellar, he manages to make these films feel big and epic, which he definitely which he definitely always nails, even when it's for something like, even when it's for comedy, he always like gives it his all. Like he's never just,
Mhm.
half baking it by any means.
Yeah, and with his comedy, he's actually a very, very good comedic scorer.
Mm-hmm.
He scored Matchstick Men, which was also a Ridley Scott film, and that's just like a fun, like quirky, bouncy little score with a lot of electronics in it. He doesn't just do those big, epic, medieval, action movies, but that's kind of his forte. He's very, very good at scoring comedy, and you mentioned Madagascar, that
Mm-hmm.
he did all three of them actually.
Yes, he did.
And yeah, that's actually the second Madagascar is one of my favorite Zimmer scores ever. And
Oh.
he actually performed it live. I saw him twice. Well, no, sorry, saw him once in 2017 at Radio City. And when they played Madagascar live, I lost it. It was just one of the coolest things ever. Uh, I also wanted to mention that just a couple weeks ago, actually, I went to the candlelight concert it was the music of Hans Zimmer performed by a string quartet in Brooklyn. That was awesome too. Sadly, Zimmer was not there, but he was in spirit through his music, and that was just really nice. They played the standards, Dark Knight, Pirates of the Caribbean, Interstellar, Inception. His go-tos, his popular entries. But I really love his stuff from the late '80s, early '90s to mid '90s. Like you mentioned, Muppet Treasure Island. That's a fantastic, great score.
Hmm.
In my opinion, better than Pirates of the Caribbean, to be honest with you. It's just more melodic. It's got just more layers to it. It just feels like there's more emotion rather, and you have so much more imagery in your head as
Well,
opposed to just like Johnny Depp flying around, on a rope.
mhm. Well, to be fair, also, a lot of the cues from Muppet Treasure Island is actually used in Parts of the Caribbean, so that makes a lot of sense why you would prefer Muppet Treasure Island over
Yeah,
Pirates. I think Pirates is more iconic,
right.
I will admit that, but I do think Muppet Treasure Island was also one where you had to really balance out being the funny Zimmer and the
Mm,
serious epic Zimmer.
yeah. And when he
And
balances both those genres, it's some of the most beautiful music you'll ever hear. Really.
absolutely.
So basically, I would recommend if you want to go like vintage Zimmer, I would check out the Cool Running score. Um, that's a fun movie also,
I've
and
seen it.
yeah, and the score is just, it's got a great Jamaican instrumentation in there. It's got a strong theme for the German bobsledders, and yeah, again it balances the comedic with the dramatic, which is a great balance there.
I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Cool Runnings when I saw it. I thought it was like this film, entertaining for its target audience.
Yeah.
But I will say this, your description of Hans Zimmer's score in the film definitely makes me want to listen to it again in the very least. And if
Yeah.
there was one thing in Cool Runnings that stood out to me was John Candy,
Oh,
because
of
I feel like
course.
he was like the most dimensional character in the movie. And I just love John Candy. He just in anything he's in, he just makes it worth seeing. Even if it was a lame script, he's always just charismatic to watch.
Yeah, I don't know if you've checked out The Great Outdoors from 1988.
On my list.
Yeah, it's a fun one too. Him and Dan Aykroyd just chewing up the scenery, annoying the hell out of each other. It's just great. But yeah, Cool Runnings was definitely one of Candy's best. I think he only did like one or two other movies after that, sadly. Uh,
Right.
but he would have gone on to this day. He'd still be acting and delighting audiences with his comedic charm. He really was something special. Um,
Definitely.
Oh, so I want to go back to Black Rain real quick. I read some trivia that aside from Michael Douglas, they were considering either Harrison Ford or Kurt Russell for the role.
You
Uh,
know what? I could see either.
right.
Honestly, out of the three, I would find Michael Douglas to be the least one I would cast
Hmm,
because you had Kurt Russell in Escape from New York,
true.
and you have Harrison Ford from Blade Runner, so it made sense to cast either one since they've
Right.
proved their acting chops. And again, Michael Douglas can do adventure films, but we don't know if he can do a serious one.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of a gamble, but it worked out.
Yeah.
Also kind of reminded me of another issue in 1989, same year, the casting of Michael Keaton as Batman. Uh,
Mm.
a lot of people were against it. They were, writing letters to Warner Brothers and like just really protesting this choice. But in the end, he's he's the best Batman in my opinion.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And while on the subject of Batman, in relation to Hans Zimmer, I think his score for The Dark Knight gives everything we want. It's energetic, it's exciting, it's dark. But I think Danny Elfman's score is the best Batman theme, hands down.
I'm so happy you said that. Yeah, for me, actually, my very favorite score of all time is Batman Returns.
Yes.
Which because I mentioned this before, but it combines the Christmas magic of Edward Scissorhands with the Batman theme and the darkness and the brooding and the
Mhm.
triumphant theme that is the Batman theme. And
Exactly.
it's a beautiful marriage of both styles, and it's just a gorgeous score.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a mess of a movie, but this is what happens when Tim Burton's completely unhinged. He just did everything he wanted to do,
Right.
which makes me question his sanity even more when watching it in a good way, but also in a concerning way. But I love the film. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite Batman movies, and it is one of my favorite scores as well.
Mhm.
Just the juxtaposition between being Christmassy,
Mm.
Batman like, and also just a flat out dramatic horror film at times.
A little bit, yeah. Biting someone's nose and squirting blood and
I mean,
just
even the scene where Catwoman is being revived by the cats,
it's
that
pretty.
looks like something out of a horror scene. Like Tim Burton was just going all out. Even the Penguin was modeled after Caligari.
Yeah, yeah, true. Um, And I think it's because Warner Brothers at that point, because the first movie was such a hit and made so much money, that they're like, okay, screw it, Tim Burton, run with it. You know, you've got complete creative control here. And he did.
Right.
He took advantage of that power, and it's one of his best movies, in my opinion.
I agree. Actually, I just want to mention also, while on the subject of when he was directing the film, he didn't want to do a sequel. He
Right.
only did because they gave him the freedom because he doesn't believe in making sequels, which I highly respect. Um, but getting to the film, actually, without counting Nightmare Before Christmas, because I'm going by the films he directed, I kid you not, Batman and Batman Returns, while clearly one is better than the other, those
Mm.
two are tied as my favorite Tim Burton film.
I respect that. I would also include Beetlejuice in that, the top three there.
Oh yeah, it's number two on my top three.
Right. And speaking of Beetlejuice, actually, I'm almost positive that this is real, but there is an image I've seen on social media, and I think it is the official teaser poster for Beetlejuice 2, which I believe is just called Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. It could be fake because we've had a lot of fakes in the past couple of years, but this felt pretty legit.
I've
Um,
seen it too. I
yeah,
mean, there have been tons of talks of a sequel being in the
yeah,
works. Personally, I
yeah,
think you can do a lot with the Beetlejuice world, the
yeah,
Beetlejuice character, but giving Tim Burton's latest track record in directing,
yeah.
I don't know if this is going to be a bland, unnecessary sequel, but we'll see. I'm optimistic.
Well, I think you're a little bit more optimistic than I am because the past couple of sequels that have come out in recent times for movies made in the 80s have really been terrible, or even the 90s for that matter. I'm thinking now of well, Space Jam: A New Legacy was just terrible,
So
and
I've heard. But
Coming
then
to America was just atrocious as well. So I'm just gonna sit back. I have very low expectations for Beetlejuice 2, to be honest.
well, my motto is I'm trying to be optimistic, but I try not to get hyped up.
Yeah,
I'm just the kind of person when I hear a film, I'm just like, let's just wait and see how it turns out.
yeah. Well,
Because I'm not one of those people that's lining up or craving to see a sequel or a film in general, because, I don't want my expectations to be broken. And I've been through that. Like,
no,
for example, there was when I heard Pee Wee Herman was coming back with Pee Wee's Holiday, I was disappointed.
right.
When I heard that they were reviving some shows, I was disappointed.
Yeah,
When I saw some of the remakes, I was disappointed, from
yeah,
Disney, which they weren't even good anyway. But, it's just you live and learn. And I'm just kind of like, after that, I'm thinking, okay, this sounds interesting. Let's see how it turns out.
yeah. And I am a Ghostbusters. So when I saw the 2016 Ghostbusters, I was totally disappointed. I was so excited because this was the first one after, decades. It was garbage. Not, I mean, it had some decent jokes in it and okay performances, but overall, very, very disappointing. Another property that I was excited for as well and was totally let down by was the Willow series on Disney Plus. um, that was just atrocious. I could barely watch it. It was more of like a soap opera than something that was close to the source material. It wasn't really a tribute to the original film. It was just kind of like a showcase for young, good-looking actors, and I was very let down with that one as well. But
Well, as the saying goes, nostalgia sells. That's really
yeah,
their mindset. We
yeah,
don't need to put effort. You're going to see it regardless. You're already connected. Therefore, we're just gonna give you a half-baked version of what we had in mind. That's really what they're thinking.
it's sad. And there's no originality there in just bringing these properties back to life.
I
Another
mean,
one, yeah.
I
So
mean, you could bring a new angle to it, a new twist,
yeah,
but you have to be committed. You have to do it because this is the vision you're going for, not
right.
because this is just a marketing ploy, which unfortunately that's what they are, but that's the business for you, unfortunately.
I know it's just Hollywood churning out this stuff that's really has like no soul after a while. It's just like
Right.
same stuff. Like one more thing because we're running a little bit out of time. They're coming out with a fourth Beverly Hills Cop movie, and they are bringing back uh, most of the cast from the original films. This could go either way, obviously, but again, my expectations are very low. So, and I don't want to be disappointed. However, I have a strong feeling that I will. So with that, I think we just have a couple minutes. And I just wanted to go and hear from you, Mr. Michael, about any plugs, any projects you're working on.
I am still working on my blog. I just posted a new review about a few weeks ago on Run Lola Run, which is a German experimental action film, which I highly recommend.
Awesome.
The blog is called Tyler the Movie Maniac,
Hmm.
and I'm in the midst of finishing up my 007 video game ranking reviews.
Nice. Oh, that's
So,
cool. Okay. Yeah. I'll tell you right now, GoldenEye is one of the greatest video games of all time.
mhm.
You probably knew that.
Oh, absolutely. Like I'm really torn between I'm at the top two. I'm torn between either GoldenEye or Nightfire as my favorite.
You know,
So,
one of
hmm?
my other favorites, oh shoot, what's the one? Oh, Everything or Nothing, I think it's called.
Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, that's it.
the third person. I thought that was great.
Oh yeah, and it was definitely a risk at the time too, considering that EA failed spectacularly on their first third-person Bond game, Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yeah,
And they were just getting off, the success of Nightfire, which
right.
was like really, selling at that time.
Was there also one? I'm going way back to like 2001. I think it was Agent Under Fire.
Yes,
That
Agent Under
was
Fire.
that was kind of underwhelming, but I enjoyed it for what it was. So,
I thought the opposite, but I will say this in terms of story, a lot of things don't make sense. But then again, you're here to play the game, not really engage in the story. And as a gameplay experience, I loved it. And this was also EA
mm,
trying to use everything. You see, during their PlayStation era, long story short, they were experimenting.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Agent Under Fire was them bringing everything they experimented in and having it all working well while adding some new ideas.
Mm.
And Nightfire is just perfecting those ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, it
So
was there were some good ones. There were some good ones, some fun ones.
yeah.
And now that I'm thinking back to like old school PlayStation games, I don't know if you've ever played the first person shooter Black.
Quite frankly, I'm not a big gamer,
Okay.
so no, but it sounds like an interesting game nonetheless.
Yeah, it's definitely got a strong GoldenEye feel to it, and it's a lot of fun. It's for the time it came out in like 2006, I believe, and it had really great graphics. It had great sound design, and the missions were fantastic. You play like a CIA operative in like enemy lines, behind enemy lines, and there's like missions and stuff, and there's a lot of shooting, a lot of explosions. Just a fun game. It's called Black. So.
Well, thank you for recommending it to me.
Yeah, it was
Sounds
on the
interesting.
it was on the PS2. So if you ever come across it. So all right, well, Tyler, I want to thank you so much. This was awesome. And before we go, I just wanted to mention some plugs on my end. If you want to see new episodes or hear new episodes, I'm on SiriusXM through Slam Radio SXM, and that's every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. You can also watch the video version of the podcast on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and that's every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. And as always, just feel free to visit the Under the Radar YouTube channel, subscribe, and share. Tyler, this was great. Thank you so much for going down memory lane with me for Black Rain for the 35th anniversary and discussing Hans Zimmer and other things.
My
So
pleasure.
yeah, you are
Thank you for
always
having me.
welcome. I can't wait until the next time you're on, and we'll talk some more.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Me too. Me too. So, guys, I'm Randy Unger. This has been Under the Radar, bringing movies and people together one frame at a time.
Under the Radar is brought to you by Magnitude Jewelry. Add a 2 to match your attitude. Patent pending interchange genuine gemstone and crystal EMF protection jewelry. For more information, please visit magnitudejewelry.com/gemgirl or call 718-268-6634.
for you.
Okay, no worries.
Yes. So I just want to congratulate you on your recent Emmy nomination. That's terrific.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. And I had a question for you. How does it feel to have two huge blockbuster films in the theater at the same time?
Well, it feels good. It's fairly unusual. And to be honest, it would seem if you looked at when they came out in theaters, you'd probably think, be forgiven for thinking that I was working on two movies at once in the spring, early summer. But actually, I wasn't. The Meg we recorded in Vienna, actually, in Austria. I nearly said Australia. Why did I say that? Oh, I recorded another film in Australia recently, yes. But it wasn't this. No, I recorded the Meg in Vienna in Austria towards the end of last year. So, we finished the film, put it in the can, and then it came out. So, but Equalizer 2, I was working up until 3 weeks before its release date. It's great to have two movies that people seem to want to go and see in the summer.
Right.
I don't think I've had that before.
Well, great. What attracted you to both films?
The Equalizer. I did the original with Antoine Fuqua, and he only had to ask. I didn't think twice about it. The thing is that we have a bit of a relationship. Many years ago, it might be 1997 or something, when I first come to America, and I was working under Hans Zimmer at his laboratory.
That was Media Ventures at the time, right?
Yes, it was.
Right.
I think it was the first action film that I was asked to do, aside from working from Hans. And I was kind of surprised to get a call. I had not met Antoine Fuqua before. I didn't know his music videos because he hadn't directed a film until that point, nor had I scored an action movie. So we did this movie called The Replacement Killers, and we had a good time on it. It was both our first films, so perhaps it wasn't our best work yet. Hopefully there was somewhere to move, somewhere to go. But and then all these years went past, a decade and a half has gone by, and also a decade, and and we kind of circled back to each other, and I was really surprised and pleased that he called me on The Equalizer, the original film, 4 or 5 years ago, and so it was a natural thing to want to develop the themes and to carry on the Denzel story.
Right.
I seem to have done a lot of films with Denzel. As a film composer, you spend a lot of time in a darkened room looking at the pictures in front of you, trying to find inspiration. And I never get bored of watching Denzel. I can't think of another Hollywood star that just convinces me right out of the gate. I never sit there thinking, really. Never. No. All the way back to I don't know. I've done several films with him. A lot with Tony Scott actually. At the helm. So it was really great that since Tony's passing that I managed to hook up with a director who also obviously loves working with Denzel Washington.
That's great.
Now the Meg was a completely different scenario because I'd never worked on Turtle Tub before. And the film at that point was called Meg, and I couldn't help thinking of Meg Ryan. I thought, do I want to be doing a
biopic on Meg Ryan?
Well, no, I thought, do I want to be doing a romantic comedy? And
right.
Yeah, my agent sent me this script. I was like, what? Okay, well, I've never done anything like this.
Right.
So, you asked what attracts one to a project, and quite honestly, for me, variety is certainly the spice of life, and it's something that I look for and hope for. I don't want to give the impression that I just sit around and pick and choose my movies.
Right.
I'm Harry Gregson Williams, not John Williams. No. Obviously, if it comes across my desk, if I'm lucky enough to get an interview, and that's how these things go. I don't know, and you never know exactly who the director's seeing. Ben Affleck, I've done his film since his first film, really, Gone Baby Gone, and he constantly reminds me that he wanted Thomas Newman to score not only Gone Baby Gone, but The Town and every film since then. But it's only half in jest, I'm sure. I mean, I think if I were directing a film, I'd want Tom Newman to do it myself. But so I don't know who else John met for the Meg.
Right.
Maybe he met a bunch of bozos and then decided that I was probably the least evil of the lot. But or maybe he went for someone right, shining from the A-team, and couldn't get them. I don't know. But when we met, we had a lovely meeting, and he said his first thing he said to me is, "Look, Harry, don't worry about it. You might have part of your name as Williams, and my last name is definitely not Spielberg. So we're not going to try and make that. We'll try and make the second best shark movie ever made." And I liked his attitude. He knew what he was making, and I was a bit disappointed when I think some people who reviewed them or saw the movie missed the point. I mean, it is what it is, and John never tried to make it anything else, and we tried to make it the best it possibly could be for what it is, and hopefully it's just really great summer entertainment.
I was certainly pleasantly surprised. I thought it was just a cheesy action horror film.
Yeah, well, there you go, and
but it was more than that.
We spent months and months working on a film without a bloody shark in it, because the visual effects come in very late,
right?
And there was a kind of swoosh of water, and then John would say, "Well, what are you doing musically, man?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? There's a wave. What do you want me? What do you want from me?" He's like, "Man, the megalodon just went by." I'm like, "Oh, well, thanks for telling me." Yeah, so it was that's a slight exaggeration, but we were yeah, excuse the pun, we were fishing for it a little bit. I mean, we really were. But when the effects started coming in, the visual effects came in quite late, and we knew what we were up against. We knew it was going to be humongous, and it needed to be. The first real time you see the megalodon, instead of going all dark and dangerous, I chose to portray kind of majesty with the music as it actually swims over the top of Cian's submersible, because she's looking at it and not with so much horror, but like, what the hell is that? So there were lots of ways to go, and obviously there are a few shockers in that, and I wanted to underline that with musically. But no, it was great fun from beginning to end, and I'm pleased that people seem to have seen it and taken from it what you're supposed to, which is a bunch of enjoyment.
Yeah,
but when you've got Jason Statham on board, it's difficult to take everything seriously, because there's something intrinsically humorous about the way he kind of goes through his paces. I hear he was a very, very good swimmer and diver.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, I think Olympic. I mean,
oh, really?
I think he, or possibly some national team he was in as a young.
Okay.
But so he obviously he looks very comfortable in the water.
Right. Now, I'm curious, how did you get involved originally? Let's backtrack a little. How did you get involved with Hans Zimmer?
Well, it was a chance meeting, actually. I'd spent a lot of time teaching music and sports, which are basically the only two things I'm good at.
All right.
And have been since I was a little boy. But and at that time, I'd finished. I'd been teaching in Egypt and in various countries around the world, and I'd come back to London. I was working in a recording studio, and I was getting interested in this sort of thing, music for visuals. I wasn't so much composing as making the tea for people. But I had a lowly position in a really funky recording studio in London, and one day the manager of the studio said, "Look, Harry, go into Studio B and take everything out." So I said, "What?" I mean, normally when you had a booking for the studio, you weren't taking things out. So I said, what do you mean, the chairs and the table? No, the mixing desk, the speakers, everything. Just empty it and put it all in a back room. So I said, well, okay. Who's coming? What's this? He said, oh, the guy who's coming, he's got all his own gear. He doesn't want any of our gear.
Oh, wow.
Normally a booking might be for a day or two, or possibly a week if it was a long project, but this booking was going to be for 4 months. So I couldn't think who the hell this bloke would be. Anyhow, I emptied the room, and lo and behold, some quite wild tech arrived ahead of Hans, his technical guy, with all this gear that had been freighted over from Los Angeles, and plumbed it all in. And then Herr Zimmer arrived, and I don't know, we became fast friends, and I really hit it off with him. And because I was kind of an assistant at the studio, I would stay all day, all night, and just perched in his room. And, gradually he asked me to start being useful. He realized that I'd had a musical education all my life, and I was on the brink of seeing what I could do with composition. I hadn't done anything in particular up to that point. But he was doing a project called Crimson Tide, which involved a lot of choral work, and I think he was quite nervous about it because he hadn't tried to insert kind of these Russian voices into a score before. And I had some experience with choral music and in my past, and he realized that, and he asked me if I'd help him wedge this choral element into the score, and I couldn't believe how much fun we were having, and anyhow after those months were up, he left and came back to Los Angeles, and I realized an opportunity had slipped through my fingers, and I felt pretty sad about it. And then one day the phone rang, and the studio manager said, "Harry, it's Hans Zimmer for you." So I'm like, "Really?
Wow.
Me?" And Hans was on the phone. I said, "Well, what the hell did he forget?" Thinking he'd forgotten a MIDI lead or something.
Right.
He said, "I forgot you. You should come. Yeah, get on a plane, get a one-way ticket." And back before 9/11, you could do that stuff.
Right.
So I got a one-way ticket, and I became his musical assistant. And back in those days, there was only one position at his place for musical assistant, and the one that he had for the previous 5 years, Nick Smith, who became a very good friend of mine, was a good friend of Hans. It was kind of graduating, if you will. It was time for him to spread his wings and do his own stuff. So there was a vacancy. It sounds like it was never really treated like that. So I came over without much expectation and wondering whether this would work out or what it was going to be like. Things went from one place to another.
And then you started work on The Whole Wide World.
I did. Within a year, I met a director who clearly wanted Hans to compose the score for his little tiny movie, but Hans wasn't going to have that, and he was magnanimous enough to say, "Well, tell you what, why don't I suggest you?" So I said,
"Wow,
well, go on then, show me." He said, "Well, the credit will probably have to be music by Hans Zimmer and Harry Griggs Phillips." I'm like, "Man, I don't mind sharing a credit with you. Besides, my name's going to be 30 foot across to yours." So that was great, and the film got into Sundance, and we all went off to Sundance, and I was bitten by the bug then. There was no stopping me, really.
And it looks like right after that you did The Rock, which is actually my favorite Zimmer score.
Yeah, no, I did.
Of all time.
The more accurately, that was Nick Lenny's sort of outgoing film, and it was Michael Bay and Jerry Bruckheimer. It was a piece of work, and I would imagine, I don't know this for a fact, that Jerry and Michael probably were hoping Hans would do the score. But Hans, I think, was weaning himself off such movies.
Was he more of a producer then?
Yeah, Hans was there and was there in case Nick, tripped up and needed helping up, and Hans did write a couple of the themes, and Nick did the lion's share of the work, and I was in a back room somewhere experimenting with this sort of music, really.
Cool.
I contributed a bit, but it wasn't my film. I was really lucky. I mean, having met Jerry Bruckheimer on that film, and Michael, I went on to do Armageddon with Trevor Rabin, and I don't know, several pictures, big pictures with Jerry Bruckheimer. Later, on my
Enemy of the State has one of my favorite themes of all time, by the way. I love that. Yeah, the main title sequence is beautiful.
Yeah, that's Trevor. That is Trevor Rabin.
Oh,
100% Trev. Yeah. With a
but your name is on the CD.
Oh yeah, no. I mean that particular piece of music is Trev. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Just but like I could tell you, probably the best piece of music in Chicken Run is by John Powell, not by me. But
was that Building the Crate?
That is, yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, speaking of John Powell, it's been 17 years since Shrek was released. Why have you not worked with him since then?
Well, no. I mean, we were never destined to work together.
Because you worked so brilliantly together.
Well, we did, and it was kind of a baptism of fire because we weren't. We as I told you, in 1995 I arrived as Hans's lowly assistant, and a couple of years later, I guess John showed up and showed promise, and I suppose the story was that Jeffrey Katzenberg came to Hans, who was obviously his main music guy, had been, for The Lion King, and when they
Prince of Egypt,
it was going to be all Hans, and he came to him with ants, and I think Hans was either busy or saw an opportunity to get us going, and I think he suggested to Jeffrey. Both John and I had assisted on Jeffrey's previous film, which Hans had scored, which was called The the Prince of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jeffrey knew our faces, and I think he was prepared to trust us on the condition that Hans was looking over our shoulders, again, in case things went wrong, which they did, a lot. But, we were pretty raw, both of us. So we weren't, we didn't show up in America, although we're both English, and we both kind of moved out here. But we moved out here at different times with different circumstances. And John, I don't think John certainly didn't come out here to write music with another person. And nor did I. I didn't really have a plan anyhow, but we were delighted to be offered Ants and not screw it up too much, so we got Chicken Run, and after that, the first Shrek. And I think after that, it had flowed through the course that it was going to flow through, and John went off and did all his Bourne Identities, which gave him a distinct identity, and I went off and worked with Tony Scott a lot, and carried on with DreamWorks, actually. And it was some years later that John circled back, or DreamWorks circled back to John. He did his Dragon stuff, which is great, which is awesome. But I've always had a high respect for him. But we weren't a partnership made in heaven.
Yeah.
We were put together and did the best we could. But I think both of us look back on it as an interesting, happy time that we wouldn't change for anything.
Would you work with John again in the future?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, in a heartbeat.
Are there any immediate plans?
No, because as far as I can see, the guy's semi-retired, and one would have to find the right project. I mean, it would just have to be the right project, the right timing. I don't know what his commitments are. I'm sure he doesn't know what mine are. We stay in touch, but when we're not constantly in each other's pockets. So, but yeah, no, I would. But there are lots of things at play there. As I say, primarily finding the project that would take Powell, Gregson, Williams. Would have to be quite an odd one, probably.
Right.
But,
I love it.
Yeah, believe me, if it crops up,
yeah,
I think I'd definitely go for it.
Now, who wrote the Escape from the Dragon cue?
I don't even know which cue you're talking about.
From the first Shrek.
Shreks, for Christ's sake. I've done a ton of Shreks.
The first one.
Oh, I don't know. You have to ask me on that.
Okay.
Probably both of us. We did quite a lot of co-writing on it.
I see. Okay. So, who are some of your musical influences?
Well, strangely, as I touched on earlier, I as a small boy, I was packed off to a boarding school in Cambridge in England, where I was able to read music pretty much better than I could read words by the time I was 7 or 8. I had a really concise and amazing classical music education. And part of what I did then was to sing with a choir that toured the world constantly and made many records. And they sang a lot of English composers. And when I think of those, if I mention them to you, I don't think you're going to know them because they're quite no. Yeah. But people like Herbert Howells and Stanford and Hubert Parry. These sort of things are kind of logged in my mind, never to disappear really. Just the harmonies and the way that music touched me. So those are my early influences, and I suppose later on one of the first scores I loved was Thomas Newman's Shawshank Redemption. I didn't realize that there could be such pretty piano music in a movie. I thought that was kind of the reserve of a classical composer, a proper composer, not a film composer. And that was quite remarkable to me. But obviously Ennio Morricone, some of the music that he's written in his lifetime, I find astonishing. And it's very humbling because, wow. Yeah. Well, speaking of which, it's been my pleasure. Well, it's been my terror sometimes to have to tread in the shoes of a Jerry Goldsmith. I did the remake of Total Recall. I did there's a seminal score for the original The original.
Very electronic and
Taking
pounding.
of Pelham 1, 2, 3 is another one. You know, that's not easy, and yeah, I know which. I know there's still much to learn.
Well, that's great. Harry, I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, no worries.
This interview will be broadcast on my internet radio talk show, Under the Radar. And I'll,
nice
thank you. And I will send you the link once that goes live. Also, our studio is in Long Island, New York. If you're ever in town, we'd love to have you swing by.
I've never been there.
Oh,
Is that the place where... Now, hold on. You know that... Did you see the last Woody Allen movie?
No, Cafe Society?
Yes.
No, I didn't see it.
Is it Cafe Society? No, I don't mean that.
Maybe The Great Gatsby?
No. The whole thing was set on Long Island, I think. Is there like a fair there, and it's kind of a boardwalk and?
No. Oh, I know what you're thinking of, the Kate Winslet movie.
Yes.
Wonder Wheel.
Yeah, I
no, that's actually Coney Island in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay. Wrong bit. Okay,
yeah, but I like where your head's at.
All right, thanks a lot, Mandy.
Yeah, and you know what? Tell John if he ever wants to do an interview, I'd love to interview him as well.
I'm sure. Okay. All right.
Thanks so much, Harry. Bye-bye.
Bye.